feels that way. I'm still in a little bit of recovery with my voice, but it is doing better after taking that rest. But it has been a little bit of a transition, kind of getting back used to talking again. So I may not make today's video super long because of that. But yeah, so one of the key things that I wanted to bring up today is this idea of sitting in discomfort. And oftentimes I think that, especially as people get older, we want to chase the thing that is going to give us the most comfort. But it's not necessarily to say that all comfort is bad, but I think if we only chase things that are comfortable to us, it is ultimately going to inhibit our growth. So oftentimes going through things that are uncomfortable are actually the things that are going to be the most powerful to us in terms of our growth and development. And that's really been important for me to notice recently, because I was oftentimes in the last couple of years kind of chasing comfort more than I was chasing growth. And that does a few things that are not always so great for our lives. One thing is that it causes us to kind of like not progress in our careers or in other parts of our lives, like even emotional growth or spiritual growth, whatever kind of growth you're aiming for, is going to be greatly reduced because you are putting a box around yourself. Basically, you're building walls saying that, okay, this is my ceiling, so I can only have this much growth, and then I get to relax, or whatever it might be, or I only have this much growth, room for growth, and then that's my ceiling for the day. So the thing about that is that we are our biggest influences over our limitations. So if you believe that you have these limitations in your day-to-day, or even just bigger goals, then ultimately you are almost creating like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because you're saying, this is all I'm capable of. So yeah, of course that's going to be all you're capable of if that's what you're saying about yourself. But it all kind of comes back to what you believe that you're capable of. And we have to, something I've been talking about a lot is this idea of being your own biggest supporter or your own best friend. And we have to believe that we are capable of bigger things. Now that's a lot easier said than done, but if you feed this part of yourself, basically we have different places in ourselves that we can act on, and everyone has these things. So we have what I like to think of as like the part of ourselves that acts from the heart, and this person might be like the person that gives during holidays, or gives things to people regardless of outcomes, and is basically, a lot of times, the person that's acting from the heart is the person that we want to be remembered by when it's all said and done. But then we also have a part of ourselves that acts based on fear or desire, and those, sometimes if you feed those things consistently, what ends up happening is that you can start doing things that are not really like what you want to be doing. Like, for example, instead of showing up to a friendship or relationship or a family member, whatever it might be, and acting from a place of care and understanding, you show up only thinking about your interests and thinking about what is best going to serve you and not the other person. And people and situations are going to reflect that when it's all said and done. And a lot of times, if you act out of fear, then the things that you are afraid of are actually going to tend to be more likely to happen. And I talked about manifesting in my last video. It's kind of a similar idea, but basically you really kind of create your own prophecy in some ways with this stuff. So you have to be really careful with that, because sometimes it can be hard to identify like which part of yourself is the voice of fear and which part is the voice of your heart, because sometimes the voice of fear can be a little sneaky, and it can almost seem like it's coming from the heart. Like, for example, someone, let's just say someone did something really wrong to you, like they cheated on you, or they did something that you really didn't like, or maybe even you think that happened. It might not have actually. Well, what can happen is you might think like, oh, this is the voice of my heart, like telling me that I should like go and try to solve this by like basically confronting this other person or whatever it might be. Or it might be like you try to solve it by manipulation or whatever it might be. Well, even if you get the desired outcome, it's not going to be coming from a positive place, and ultimately that is going to destroy whatever the positive outcome that you want is. And we have to take these hard situations in life, and I'm going to go outside of that example, but like when you're given a really challenging situation in life, we have a choice. It sometimes doesn't seem like we do, but you have a choice to either let it bring you down, or you have a choice to use that circumstance to your advantage and try to learn everything that you can from it, so that you can actually walk out of it in a better place than you started. And you can actually do this with any situation. Like, if you're applying for jobs, you get rejected, you can take that rejection and try to, instead of thinking of it as a failure, think of it as, okay, what did I learn from this rejection? Like, was there something more that I could have done to influence this decision? And sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't, but most of the time there is, and there's something you can learn from every failure and experience. So these are a few things I've had kind of floating through my mind recently. So just some food for thought. Things have been going pretty well. Otherwise, I have been back on track with what I was doing. Been doing a lot of meditation, and I just feel like I'm going to go back to something real quick before I go on any further. This is probably going to be the last thing I talk about here, but you really always want to try to feed that version of yourself that is coming from the heart, ultimately, because that is your truest self. happen is that voice can become louder and louder until the other voices are not as loud, and they'll still exist, they will always exist. But if you're not feeding them all the time, then the positive voice will tend to rear its head more often, and eventually it will be impossible to ignore that voice. So that's all I have for today. Hope you guys are doing well. Peace.